I'm sorry for worrying you.
It in the hospital's visiting room. I said this to my husband and mother-in-law Sophie, who had come to see me. Seated in a wheelchair, a collar around my neck, my arm and leg wrapped in bandages. Though the anesthesia is working now, the thought of the pain to come weighs heavy on me.
It must have been hard to come here in the heavy snow. Thank you for coming. Sophie, I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
As I bowed to them, I heard a sigh from above. Sophie, without taking off her coat, frowned at me.
You really are clumsy, aren't you? Pushed here only to find a mere fracture and whiplash.
I felt the staff at the nearby nurse station glance our way, caught in an unpleasant scene. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. My husband then spoke.
Now, how soon can you leave the hospital? I bound the hospital fees.
Without a word of concern for me, he carelessly threw a paper bag onto the sofa.
They said about a month to start. Let's hear more details together tomorrow. There's talk of transferring to a rehabilitation center.
Moment, as it's Richard. That's way too long. Then the Haim. She'll be up in 10 days.
I relayed what was told, but my husband, impatient, retorted while stomping his foot.
A abolition transfer. That's more money, right? It's not covered by the compensation. Not a cent will come out of our pocket.
That's right. Our only reliance is on Joseph's earnings. We can't afford your injury with our money.
Sophie added, nodding at my husband's words. Our only reliance on his earnings? What is she talking about? I murmured quietly.
I contribute money too.
I whispered, confirming this. Sophie replied,
Don't be silly. Charlotte, your meager salary is hardly worth mentioning. You're essentially living off Joseph.
She laughed mockingly and patted my shoulder, a simple gesture that was shockingly painful to my current state. I nearly cried out, without knowing my condition. Sophie continued,
If you want to stay in the hospital so much, you might as well not come back at all. I'll bring all your stuff tomorrow.
Wait, Sophie, what are you saying?
I asked, stunned. My husband then said to Sophie,
Mom, that's a problem. Oh, I'll take care of the house if she's not here. Last rubber, she's Birchlurum. It's too much for Mom alone, right?
Surprised at my husband's words. I looked at him, but he showed no remorse, appeased by her son's concern. Sophie suggested he can ask that nosy lady for temporary help.
It's bearable if it's just until then. Besides, staying with such a thick-skinned person is toxic for you.
As my sense of the sense and blesses your way, Mayor. I can't do housework. Doesn't earn much. No good qualities, no point in supporting her with my money.
When I nodded back at Sophie's story, my husband looked at me and snorted a laugh. A ridiculous exchange between my husband and Sophie unfolds right before my eyes. I looked down silently to hide my emotions. Taking advantage of this, the two of them laugh at each other. In a quiet voice, I asked them, So are you saying we should get a divorce?
Oh, well, yeah. Brandy David there. Why you want to stop it? You got no one but Moo.
If only he knew how much I wanted to say. Even so, let me just say this.
It's understood. I'll gladly grant you a divorce.
With a broad smile, I lifted my face and said to my husband. Seeing this, my husband and Sophie stepped back, one step, then another.
What? Did you just say you're happy about it?
Yes. Please bring all your belongings and the divorce papers tomorrow.
Sophie, stunned, said to me, to which I cheerfully replied, Come on. Let's get divorced quickly. I have no lingering feelings for you. My name is Charlotte. I'm turning 30 this year. I mainly do clerical work as a temporary employee at agricultural cooperatives. I have a husband, Joseph, and we've been married for just 2 years. The meddling old lady at my workplace set her sights on me when I was single and introduced me to Joseph, starting our relationship. Nothing heals a broken heart like a new love, she used to say, though the encounter was due to external pressure. Joseph and I weren't incompatible. We both liked outdoor activities, got excited over the same music, and our relationship deepened. He's an only child and had always lived at home. By this time, he was already living with Sophie, and I had braced myself to live in my in-laws' house after marriage.
I must be quite meticulous. I'll teach you our house rules before we get married.
He said as I signed the marriage certificate. Vacuum every day. At cleaning once a week. Don't let dishes pile up. Be thorough with the drying process. ensure family schedules run smoothly with timely meals and baths. It felt like joining the army with all these rules. I thought about it, but didn't say anything. I almost stopped signing, but it was too late. The marriage certificate was already in his hand. Don't worry too much. Mom isn't as strict as it sounds. You'll be fine. I was filled with anxiety, but if I protested, the marriage probably wouldn't happen. Honestly, I thought this was my last chance. Before returning to my hometown, I worked in the city as a company employee. I had a senior male colleague as a romantic partner, living together for over 4 years. Feeling anxious about him not bringing up marriage, I learned about his infidelity suspicions from a colleague investigating. I found he was involved with the junior I had trained. Who was he serious about? Her Oni? Without getting the chance to confront him, my anxiety grew and exploded at the worst possible moment, a company drinking party. I confronted by a drunk me. He apologized but defended the junior. How could I continue the relationship after that? I declared our breakup in front of bosses and colleagues and also announced my resignation. 2 months later, I returned to my hometown, relying on my parents. They said nothing about my pathetic return, but they must have had mixed feelings. Well, I end up living alone. That's when the company's meddlesome lady stepped in. The background, I agreed to my husband's words, thanks to the meddling lady acting as a matchmaker. I married and started living with 3 people in the in-laws' house. Sophie was meticulous, as my husband said. I'll supervise you properly, she told me on the first day of living together. Ever since the meeting, Sophie's sharp eyes never felt welcoming. It's odd to say, but I felt she didn't consider me family. Trying to make a good impression, I bowed deeply to Sophie with a cheerful voice. The following days were nothing like the happy marriage I had imagined. Waking up at 5 a.m., careful not to wake my sleeping husband. I quickly stopped the alarm and tiptoed to the kitchen, mindful of the sleeping Sophie in the next room. While preparing breakfast, I hurriedly did my hair and applied makeup like scribbling. The alarm went off for my husband and Sophie, but there was no sign of them waking up. I wake the 2 of them up, sometimes getting scolded by my half-asleep husbands, while rushing my TV-engrossed husband through breakfast. I bow to Sophie's complaints about the seasoning. I hand my husband his lunchbox and ask about his return time.
Around 7 in the evening? Upper Sire. I'm sure, just...
He replies nonchalantly, ignoring my further inquiries, and leaves the house. I return to the kitchen to prepare lunch for Sophie and, without a moment to check for anything forgotten, I too leave for work. Punching the time card, I'm just about to avoid being late. I know I should wake up and act earlier, but I can't sacrifice more sleep. Too focused on work because I can't afford overtime. I skip the lunchtime I used to enjoy with my colleagues. No detours, except for shopping. I rush home, greet Sophie, and immediately start cleaning the house. Get to printing stories, running the washing machine, and once it's done, transferring the heavy, wet laundry to the dryer. While preparing dinner, I keep checking the clock. Not knowing when my husband will return, I act on experience and guesswork. Thinking it's about time, I hang the laundry and switch on the bath. If I'm right, my husband arrives for dinner and bath. Chikrang. I apologize to Sophie and let her bathe first, and then join my husband for dinner when he arrives. While the 2 relax, I prepare for tomorrow, check supermarket flyers, and do the important bed making, finally taking a moment to breathe. A proper conversation with my husband happens maybe twice a week at most. Mostly, I'm too exhausted and half asleep, or he goes to bed first. Sophie, seeing me like this, criticizes me as slow, and then retires to her room once satisfied. This is my daily routine, trying to abide by the in-laws' house rules. Isn't it absurd? Why am I the only one following these rules, working from morning to night? Initially, I thought I'd be doing these tasks with Sophie. After all, these were the routines supposedly done by Sophie and my husband. But after a week of showing me around, Sophie suddenly left everything to me and stopped doing any housework. Absolutely nothing. I was shocked, but if I didn't act, the house wouldn't function. Fix or light teaing, seeing me work hard, my husband never offered help or appreciation. It's taken for granted that I do everything. He relaxes as if it's his right. The family schedule in the rules was essentially about his lifestyle, expecting me to adjust to what he wants. That was the real face of the rules. And first, I was too focused on meeting his and Sophie's demands to notice. But now it's clear that they see me as nothing more than a servant. Am I going to age in this house? Divorcing might disappoint my parents. Gradually, I began to feel resent about my life. Then, an unexpected turning point came. One day at work, I met a man. His name is John. Just a year older than me, he's almost like a childhood friend. Our moms were close friends, influencing us to spend time together like siblings, going to school together, studying together. He moved away the summer of 10th grade when his parents were transferring overseas, and we lost touch. We exchanged a few messages, but life got busy, and we drifted apart. He returned to America a few years ago, having studied agriculture and business at a university abroad, and came back here to make his mark. His bright smile, full of dreams and hope, overwhelmed me, and I grew increasingly downhearted in our conversation. Seeing me silent, he offered to listen. Esther's. I told him my situation. Then, the next day, he offered me a part-time job at his company with reduced hours. The job involved writing pops for the store and creating simple flyers. Charlotte, you were in the art club and you loved drawing illustrations, right? Could you do this as a sort of break at home? He remembered what I liked. I was so pleased that I nodded in agreement to John's request. Since then, I started working part-time at his company for a few hours on my days off. Honestly, my body feels the strain with the increased workload, but being away from my husband and Sophie's watchful eyes and freely doing what I enjoy has been a refreshing change, and I feel lighter in spirit, and the pay was unexpectedly good. I can't accept so much for just a little help. I tried to refuse, but John stopped me. Your work has been a great help to me. You deserve proper compensation and gratitude for your efforts. I couldn't refuse after being told that. Thus, towards fiction, I found an unexpected sense of purpose and extra income, gradually regaining my self-esteem. Thanks to this, I started to talk back to my husband and Sophie a bit, and they seemed displeased. Seasons passed, and winter arrived. This year's winter brought unprecedented heavy snow. I decided to commute by bus due to the conditions. Who could have predicted that a small truck would mistakenly collide with the bus? In the crowded bus of people in the same predicament, we were thrown against seats and windows. I was pinned against the door by several people. I felt intense pain throughout my body, unable to move or speak. When I regained consciousness, I was being transported to the hospital in an ambulance with broken ribs, arm and leg. Fortunately, my dominant arm was unharmed, so I immediately contacted my husband and Sophie. I waited for their arrival, but they took an unusually long time. After the doctor left and visiting hours nearly ended, the two of them finally appeared, concerned only about housework and money, not sparing a word of concern for me. Seeing them like that, my mind was made up. I'm telling you, I'll grant your wish for a divorce. What's wrong with you two? I said with a smile to my husband and Sophie. They were surprised by my response. You'll be the one in trouble if we divorce, retorted Sophie. Don't bother coming back to us later, added my husband, and they quickly left the hospital. Say what you will. I'll never return to the house waiting for you. The next morning, my husband didn't visit me, but threw my belongings at the hospital reception. Among them was the divorce application, angrily filled out. In the margin, in Sophie's handwriting, was written, "Let's see if you can file this, stupid wife." It was written in Sophie's handwriting, thinking I would apologize and come back, or that I couldn't file it while being hospitalized. Fortunately, a divorce application can be filed by a proxy. I contacted John, entrusted him with everything necessary, and had him file it on my behalf.
I thought I checked your house and found your belongings thrown in the yard. I contacted your parents and will collect them, informed John. Shh.
I couldn't help but laugh at the self-centered behavior of the two from my in-laws' house. Medical tests revealed my injuries weren't severe enough to require major surgery or transfer to another hospital, and I was able to leave the hospital without any after effects after about a month and a half. My parents were genuinely happy to welcome me back home. Having heard from John, they cried, apologizing for not noticing sooner. I cried with them, apologizing for not confiding in them. Life in the hospital felt happier compared to the in-laws' house, but the familiar comfort of my own space is different. I still had days before I had to return to work, so I decided to take it easy at my parents' house. A few days after being discharged, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. That's with my parents away. I answered the door, only to find my ex-husband and Sophie standing there. Seeing the last people I wanted to, I couldn't hide my distaste. I tried to close the door immediately, but Joseph's brute strength prevailed, and I ended up letting them in.
Are you the file for divorce?
Joseph yelled at me as soon as he entered. Why? I see no reason not to. Continuing a marriage that's nothing but enslavement is out of the question. I replied calmly. Joseph's face turned red and he clenched his fists on the table. Then Exmiel spoke. Don't say such terrible things like enslavement. We're the ones who've been inconvenienced by your sudden disappearance. Stingsidex people apologize right now? Exmiel, playing the victim, demanded apology from me. Following her, Joseph pointed a finger at me.
I would you go spreading around on my workplace. Rumors that I oppressed you, that I'm a terrible husband. How are you even going to this?
Oh, that. Sorry, but that was the work of the meddling lady, not me. She asked me a lot when she visited me in the hospital, so I told her. I said with a smile. The meddling lady, our matchmaker, had come to visit me in the hospital. After giving me some get-well gifts, she eagerly inquired about my divorce. I told her everything, knowing she would likely spread the word. Finally, I said, it's a secret. I thought for sure that she would talk about it to everyone, but I never expected it to have such an impact so quickly. It was an unexpected happy miscalculation. Everything about you oppressing me and being a terrible husband is true, so there's no issue. If you're losing trust because of it, that's on you. I retorted to Joseph, then pulled out a voice recorder from a nearby drawer. I've recorded all your abusive words on this. Conversations where you both called me a replaceable pawn. And what you said in the hospital, it's all here. Ja had given it to me for situations like this. I had saved all the evidence. Joseph reached for the recorder, but I pushed his hand away. Even if he took it, I had copies elsewhere. What are you going to do with that? You're not thinking of suing us, are you? Exmal asked, her voice trembling. I nodded with a smile. I'm planning to claim alimony with this as evidence. You both have physically and mentally pushed me to the edge, so it's a fair demand. Realizing the gravity of their actions, Exmal turned pale.
By the way, I heard you two are struggling financially because of excessive gambling and shopping. You even dipped into my meager earnings. Did you that wouldn't notice? Indeed, they had mocked my low income while the real problem was their wasteful habits. Joseph with lottery tickets and ex-mother-in-law with her shopping sprees for bags and accessories.
They never admitted their own faults, always blaming me. It's a fact that you couldn't earn much, ex-mother-in-law retorted, sounding like a sore loser. I shook my head in disbelief and told the two of them, you have no idea. I didn't tell you, but I've been freelancing. I earned several times, more than you. And I savings. You're not in a position to mistreat me over money. Wanting no further conversation with them, I pointed towards the door and told them to leave. When I threatened to call the police, if they didn't, they panicked and deeply apologized.
They're terribly sorry. Speak, boss. If these rumors spread any further, I could get fired and won't be able to make a living.
Joseph said, bowing his head to me. The ex-mother-in-law, with her face a mess from crying, also pleaded we were wrong. We admit to saying terrible things and making you work, but we're sincerely apologizing now. Please, spare us the irony. Despite their words, I had no intention of forgiving them. I called the police, and the two of them, wailing, were taken outside by the officers who arrived. As I listened to the fading sound of the patrol car, I sighed with relief, thinking that this was finally over. A week later, as promised, I filed for alimony against Joseph and ex-mother-in-law. The voice recorder evidence I submitted proved effective, which was a relief. Joseph lost his credibility at work and in the community due to the rumors. He wasn't fired, but his chances of promotion vanished due to the scandal reaching the higher-ups, and he'll likely remain a regular employee for life. He can't quit either, given the alimony payments, so he'll continue to work modestly. As for ex-mother-in-law, she's become a recluse. It must be unbearable for her to face the gossiping neighbors if she steps outside. Her beloved son's chances of marriage are gone now. Same with no money, she can't relieve stress through her favorite shopping sprees. All of this is the result of her own actions, so she might as well learn to live with it. Lastly, let me tell you about what happened to me. I'm getting married to John.
I know you might be done with marriage, but I can't give up on you. As Charlotte, John confessed, as forcible as that. His face was red, and I nodded with tears of joy.
I resigned from my job at agricultural cooperatives and now work as the vice president of John's company, putting our combined efforts into our work and home life. Finally, after so many failures with men, happiness has come my way. Together with John, I'm looking forward to building a future